Welcome, Cyclones. My name is Katie Lichtai, and I am on staff at the Iowa State University Alumni Association. Before we get started with today's presentation, I would like to see where you are all watching from. So if you can take a second and type in the chat the city and or state that you're watching from, I think that would be a lot of fun. You'll definitely want to do this because at the end of today's presentation, we are going to randomly select someone who leaves a comment in the chat box today. So this is an easy way to get your name into the drawing. With that, I would like to go ahead and just introduce our presenter today, 2004 ISU alum Kathleen Riessen. Kathleen is the one you call when you don't know whom to call. She has started, bought, sold, grown, and closed businesses over the last 15 years. In the process, she has developed a penchant for solving unique problems quickly. Riessen's gift is helping people around her achieve clarity in their businesses and their lives. She's also the #1 new release author on Amazon for her book, Joy and Uncertainty, A Guide to Creating a Meaningful Life, and host of a weekly live radio show named after herself, The Kathleen Riessen Show. We are so glad to have her join us today to share solutions and insights on what to do when you don't know what to do. We encourage you to use the chat box to leave your questions and comments throughout the presentation. There's also going to be some time at the end of the presentation for questions. So with all of that, Kathleen, I'll turn it over to you.
Hello! I'm so excited to be here with you. Thank you for having me. So yes, what to do when you don't know what to do. It's such an important topic. And one of the things that we're going to talk about today, I want to start off with letting you know about a time when I didn't know what to do. This picture that you're seeing on the screen, it was taken in August of 2017. And at that time, we were in Florida vacationing with my family, my husband, my 3 kids. And while I wanted to be enjoying that time with them, what was really on my mind was this question of, should I quit my business? And in this case, I had run my business for nearly 10 years. I'd actually started that business when my oldest son, who you can see in the red shirt, Caden, I was 6 months pregnant with him. And so that was a time in my life I'd covered all the hurdles. I'd gone through all of the challenges. And here I was with a great husband, great kids, a house, a retirement account, all these things that I had dreamed of, the vision that I'd set for my life, I was accomplishing it. And this thought of saying, what if I don't want that anymore? What if there's some other way that I'm supposed to serve, some other impact that I'm supposed to make? And those feelings were coming up for me, but I didn't know what to do with them. And when I looked around, I would talk to my husband about him, and he was an entrepreneur too, but he was used to my income. He was comfortable with that. And so it was a little scary for him. And he was a little biased in that when I asked him, what should I do? And I talked with my friends who didn't own businesses, and they couldn't understand why I would possibly want to leave my job. So I buried that for another month. And what happens when we bury things, when we know there's challenges and we don't answer them, we don't have clarity, we oftentimes see other challenges in our body. And for me, it was health. So about a month later, my ears started ringing, and I didn't know what was going on, but I just kept hearing this annoying sound in my ears. And then the next day I was at work, and I felt really sick, like nauseous. I said to my team, I got to go home. I ran to my car. I got in my car, and it was 7 minutes from my office to my house. And I used a technique that I've used when I run, and I count to 100. 1, 2, 3. And when I do that, it shuts my brain off. I don't feel the pain. And so I could control my breathing. And when I got home, I pulled into the garage, I ran upstairs, and I went into the bathroom, and you don't want to hear the details of the rest of that. But when I was complete, I laid on the tile of the bathroom floor, and I said, I'm out. And I didn't even know what I was out of, but I knew I was out. And that was a critical point where I decided that I got to actually sell my business, and I got to step into whatever was next. I didn't even really know what was next. But what I knew was that had actually been a decision that I've been desiring to make for 3 years, and I buried it. So maybe some of you guys have had that feeling. Maybe you guys know what I'm talking about. Maybe you have your own challenge in front of you. And some of you, thank you very much. Many of you filled out the challenges. So I know a lot of you are facing some similar big questions. And what I want you to know is that I've developed this tool set that I'm going to teach you today. And what I know to be true is that making decisions, big decisions, is a muscle. It's just like going to the gym. And the more that we practice it and actually use a process to make these decisions, the faster we can make these big critical decisions, the more that we can have confidence in these big critical decisions, so that when we do make them and we step forward, we're not in that uncomfortable wobble. You know what I'm talking about? That wobble of, oh, should I have made that? Should I have not? We play this should have game with ourselves. So today, where we're going to spend our time is on learning first what stops us from making decisions. So there are lots of stuff that can stand in our way, and maybe some of these are things that are affecting you today. And the second thing we're going to talk about is a 5-step process that you can use when you don't know what to do. This is the exact process that I used when I made the decision to sell my business. It's the exact process that I used just over a year ago when I was confronted. I hadn't seen my mom for a month. She was in the hospital because of COVID. We couldn't go in. I walked in to the hospital room, and I knew in that moment that she wasn't going home. And I got to make that decision about how we handled that. I used that exact same process during that time as well. So whatever decision that you're making, whether it's at work or at home, this process is going to be supportive for you. So what I want to ask you before we even dig into that is, how many decisions do you think that we as adults make a day? Go ahead and put that in the comments. Just let me know, how many decisions do you think that we make a day? So 5,550, 32. What do you think? How many decisions do you think that the average adult makes a day? I'm loving this. Tamara, I can't even pronounce that number, but that's a lot of nines. Yeah, 850, 42, thousands. Yeah, we've got all kinds of decisions. So yes, thank you guys for answering that. According to a study by Inc.com, the average adult makes 35,000 decisions a day. 35,000. So can you even believe that? Imagine that. This is, do I get up out of bed? My alarm went off. Do I hit snooze on it? How many times do I hit snooze? Should I brush my teeth today? Should I take a shower? What clothes should I wear? What do I want for breakfast? Should I drive in my car? Should I walk to work? All these questions that we're making these choices every single day. And even though those may not seem like big decisions, they're still decisions. And it can easily put us into something called decision fatigue. And when we're in decision fatigue, we just don't want to make decisions. Have any of you ever experienced decision fatigue? You get to decision 32,000 in the day, and decision 32,001, you don't want to do it. And so what happens when you don't want to do it? This thing called analysis paralysis. All right, so if you've ever heard of analysis paralysis, or you have any idea what analysis paralysis is, go ahead and type it in the comments. What do you think analysis paralysis is? So I'll give you a second. Just write down, what do you think analysis paralysis is? Decision fatigue. Okay, we've got some people that have experienced this. Yes. Okay, so what is analysis paralysis? Yeah, inability to make decisions. Yeah. Being overwhelmed trying to make the decision so you can't. Absolutely. When you continue to try and make a decision, but you just can't. Yes. This is all definitions of analysis paralysis. It's that period of time where we think if we consume more information, then we'll actually be able to make better decisions. So we tell ourselves that that's the case. That, Christy, when I'm a deer in headlights, absolutely. It's that point where you say, I just can't move forward. I can't make one more decision. To the outside world, it may look like indecisive. It may look scattered. But really what's happening underneath that is we are paralyzed. And oftentimes it's fear that comes in our way. So I have a question for you guys. More information means what? on your results. Better results, worse results, or same results. So think about this. More information means better results, worse results, same results. So go ahead and use the chat and let me know. What do you think? Does more information, if you have more information coming in on a decision, so you got a big decision ahead of you and you say, I'm going to go and gather a lot of information. I'm going to have everything in front of me. Does that mean that you get better results, worse results, or the same results? What do you think? Put it in the comments. Better, depends. Better, it depends. Yeah, it could be the same depending on the information. Classic, it depends. Worse. Okay, we are all across the board on that. And so there's actually a study from McKinsey that really studied this. And they said in most cases, so yeah, absolutely, does it depend? Sure. But we're talking on in the most cases, when we are set to make a decision and we say more information, does it mean better, worse, or same results? This study actually showed that it produces the same results. More information means the same results, which means that this is 99 times out of 100. So yes, does it depend? 1 out of 100, it depends. But most of the time, we actually have all of the information that we need to make the decision in that moment. In that moment. Or we have enough information to say, I can make this decision when I have this information, but we can move forward in committing to making a decision when we get this piece of information. That's a very different position than saying, I just can't make the decision. I just can't make the decision. So more information means the same results, according to this McKinsey survey. So then what's really stopping us? What's really underneath it? And I believe that it's our relationship with failure. Now, this word, it's in big red letters, and I want you to look at that. Look hard at that. And I want you to type in the comments, when you see that word, what comes up for you? What's your relationship with failure? Do you see failure and like, yes, bring it on, another opportunity to learn. This is amazing. Or do you see that word and you say, I don't want to have anything to do with it. I hate failure. Failure is for somebody else, but it's not for me. What's your relationship with failure when you see that word? What do you think of? Yeah, fear, anxiety. Yeah, keep posting in there. I teach a lot of emotional intelligence, and when I work with the executives and they call me up and they say, I don't know what to do, a lot of times what I hear is a fear of failure. And so they don't want to make decisions because we don't want to risk failing. Wasted time, anxiety, yes, all of this stuff. So we have this relationship with failure that says, I don't want it. What I haven't seen in the comments yet, and maybe it's in here, I don't see it when I'm scrolling through, is a big yes for failure. And the thing about failure is that we get to see it that way. We get to see it as the yes that it is, but it can be really hard. And so I want to share a story with you. You heard in my bio that I am a #1 new release author. And that is true. I am. It's something that I'm going to take to my grave. But I want to tell you a little story about that. So this is my book, Joy and Uncertainty, A Guide to Creating a Meaningful Life. This book was ready to go in October of 2019. It was all in its story format, but something in me was saying, now is not the time to publish this book. And I didn't know what that meant, but I thought, okay, it's fine. And then March of 2020 came and the COVID happened and the pandemic. And I thought, now seems like a time that Joy and Uncertainty, a book about joy in uncertainty, seems like that's a pretty good time to release this book. So I did. And in April 1st of 2020, my book came out in ebook format, and June 1st, it came out in paperback. Now, I used Amazon KDP process for this. If any of you guys have ever published a book or talked to somebody that has, it's a process that Amazon uses for authors. So in the process of Amazon KDP, when you're uploading your book into Amazon, you get to select the categories that your book's going to be under. You can select up to 3 categories. And I saw vision as a category. And this seemed amazing because my book was about, well, if you're here and you want to go here, we can break through anything that's in the way and we can get there. So vision, I have a vision of where I wanted to be. This seemed perfect. I was so excited that I clicked vision and a couple other categories and I moved on. I thought, oh, this is going to be great. Well, April 1st comes and my book launches and I'm watching Amazon and all of a sudden I see #1 new release author pop up on Amazon. I was so excited. I call my husband and I say, guess what? I'm a #1 new release author. And he says, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I said, but wait, it gets better. I'm a #1 new release author in eye problems. You guys, the vision category was not, it was not about the vision I thought they were referring to. It was about eye problems. And so you are now witnessing this very, like, I am the #1 new release in eye problems. So I totally failed in that respect. It was a total flop. And I can laugh about it. And now here's the best part about Google in Amazon, the algorithms, they drop the in eye problems and they only keep the #1 new release. So my in eye problems dropped off shortly after that and it was no big deal. And I still get to say, I'm a #1 new release author. And if you notice in my bio, we just don't highlight in eye problems. And it makes me laugh. It makes me smile. And it reminds me that failure is okay. Like, it's all right. And guess what? I'm not working on my second book that'll be released here shortly. And I'm going to dig into the details that they give on each of the subcategories. So I learned this huge lesson. And in reality, it just wasn't that big of a deal. So we get to shift how we're looking at failure as opportunities to learn. And when we start to look at it that way, it's, oh, okay, well, it's not that big of a deal. We can move forward. It's not that big of a deal. And if I hadn't shared with you today that I was the #1 new release author in eye problems, you would never know. Now I would be robbing you of this incredible story of how I get to make fun of myself about this and what my failure opportunity was. But the reality is our failures, we think they're the biggest thing in the world. And to us, they might be, but to the outside world, nobody cares. So that's the thing to remember about failure. We can let it stop us, but we don't have to. Now, I'm going to show you another word that often stops us, and it's this word right here, wrong. So same thing, use those comments and let me know, what's your relationship with the word wrong? Oftentimes when we hear wrong, we put it in the context of right or wrong, right or wrong. But wrong is just a word in and of itself. So let me know, what's your relationship with the word wrong? What do you think of when you hear the word wrong? Failure. Okay, I see that. So the tie-in with what we just talked about. Thank you. Vegas 242. It doesn't really sound like a failure at all. I like that. Depends on my goals, but yes. Yeah, judgment. So when we hear wrong, we hear judgment, incorrect. Enables me to learn something. Yeah, so we all have different contexts of what wrong means. And the reality of that is that wrong to somebody may not be wrong to somebody else. It's all about our own belief system and what we've created. So when we think about the word wrong, I want to show you something that, well, who I'd like to say, one of my good friends, Albert Einstein, a few years ago, many years ago, he was teaching a class. He goes up to the board and he starts writing this on the board, just as you see it today. 9 times 1 equals 9, 9 times 2 is 18, 9 times 3 is 27. Now, if I was in person with you, what I would do is I would go up and do that on the board just like that. In fact, just last week, I was speaking with a group of very intelligent high schoolers. And I did this exact same thing. I went to the board and I drew it. 9 times 1 equals 9. 9 times 2 equals 18. 9 times 3 is 27. And I told them, now I am a recovering CPA. I love CPAs, by the way. That was certified public accountant early on in my career. That was my foundation for what I created. And I said, so just bear with me as I do this. And I got to that very last set of math. And some of you may have noticed, be honest if you did, if you noticed it, it's been up there for a little bit. You can write in the comments if you noticed that 9 times 10 equals 91. Now, a lot of you may be saying 9 times 10 doesn't equal 91. Kathleen, what's your point here? But just what happened when I was talking with those high school students, I presented with 3 different classes. The first class, they were kind of kind. They were pretty kind about it. They whispered to themselves, Kathleen didn't do this math correct. I could see them over there talking to their buddies. And I said, what's going on? What's all this whispering about? And they said, you got it wrong. I said, what do you mean I got it wrong? They said, you got it wrong. I said, what about this is wrong? And they said 9 times 10 doesn't equal 91. I said, what do you mean? And they just couldn't understand what I couldn't understand about 9 times 10 not equal 91. So then the second class comes in and they're really quiet. They were very nice about it. Nobody said anything until I looked at them again and I said, all right, are we good to move on? Everybody understand this? Finally, some kid in the back, he raises his hand and he says, Kathleen, 9 times 10, that's not 91. I said, well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And the third class on it, they just were not nice at all. They were standing up. They were laughing at me. One of them said, well, I didn't want to say anything, but I was really wondering what we were going to learn from you if you couldn't even get your math correct. And it was the perfect example. And thank you, Mark, for pointing this out. I'm still 90% correct as a whole. This is about where we put our focus. So when you look at this, 9 of these I answered exactly as the rest of the world would have answered, but 1 I did not. And it's about when we mess up, when we do things that we consider are wrong, where do we put our focus? Do we put our focus on what didn't work, or do we put our focus on what did work? Because wherever we put our focus is what we're going to create more of. And so what often stops us is we're so afraid of getting it wrong that we never attempt to get it right. We're so afraid of getting it wrong that we never attempt to get it right. We focus so much on what happens if I go up to the board and I write 9 times 10 equals 91. How embarrassing. That I miss out that 90% of that is correct. And so, yes, absolutely, Jason, thank you. Math isn't so flexible as that. Absolutely. And the point here is that we are going to miss things. We're going to mess up. That's just we're human beings. And unless we weren't human beings, it's going to happen. But are we going to dwell on it? Are we going to accept the support where you guys can say, hey, Kathleen, it's not actually 9 times 10 equals 91. Are we going to accept that support, or are we focused on being perfect? And so then we get into analysis paralysis, or then we get into holding ourselves back because we're not willing to fail. We're not willing to get it wrong. And so I work with executives and entrepreneurs all around the world. And the ones that play a big game, they're willing to get it wrong. They're willing to fail. And so my question for you, are you willing to fail? And are you willing to get it wrong? Because creating what you want requires that. It absolutely requires that. So that's what stops us. Those are some of the keys. We could spend hours and hours on this, but those are the main things that stop us. So now we get to shift our focus when we know what stops us to how we actually make these decisions, the 5 steps that make these decisions. All right. So when we get done with these 5 steps, my goal is that you can say, I know what to do. I know how to use this process to answer these big decisions. Now, what I want you to know is some of these big decisions is that they take a lot longer to answer, and that's okay. And some could be done in 30 seconds. That's okay too. So we're going to start in what I heard from you guys. Thank you again for the people that responded and showed some of the challenges. So the most common challenges that I saw were right here on this list, with that first one being the biggest one. Should I stay in my current job or look for a new one in a new field, or even the same field? But should I stay in my current job? So all of these questions, any of them and any of the other ones that you guys listed, all of them can be solved with this 5-step process. But as we demonstrate this 5-step process, we're going to use this first point to outline it and to show you, okay? So should I stay in my current job or look for a new one? All right, so step 1 in the process is to listen and ask questions. So when somebody calls me up and they say, Kathleen, I don't know what to do. I've got this really big challenge in front of me. The first thing that I do is ask a lot of questions. And so for you, I'm going to give you some examples of these questions. Now, you could have a conversation with yourself if you want. That's one way. But another way to answer these questions is to write it out. When I was working on the really big decision of, do I sell my business or not? What does that look like? I wrote a lot. I actually wrote for 30 days. Whatever came up, I would give myself a prompt question and then I would just write. And when I looked back at my writing, the answer was clear about where I got to go. I could see it all coming up. And so, if we were talking about should I stay in my job or not, here are some of the questions that I would ask you and that you can ask yourself. And they're questions like, what goes through your mind when your alarm clock goes off in the morning? Are you jumping out of bed excited? This morning, you guys, I was so excited to talk with you. I got my foam fingers out. And I was wiggling and dancing with my foam fingers. My kids are totally into Rick Astley, and we Rickrolled them this morning. They've been Rickrolling us, my husband and I, a lot. I just had fun. I was so lit up about coming to talk with you. And so my question is, what goes through your mind when your alarm clock goes off in the morning? Are you still excited to get up or not? And so that's something that you get to think about. Tell me about your first day on the job. Now, this is just about bringing up, okay, what was it that your expectations are for your job? So let's go back to that. Tell me about your team and your interactions with your team. You may not have a team, and that's okay. Tell me about what's important to you. You dreamed of when you were little. What did you want to be? So all of these questions really get you to start thinking about the bigger picture and what it is that's important to you. So listening and asking questions, this is a really critical step. But one of the things that I want to talk about is this bias trap. And I briefly mentioned it when I was talking about my challenge. The bias trap is that when we have challenges and we ask other people and we often expect them to have some kind of feedback for us. So we're asking them, what would you do in this case? What can happen is this thing called the bias trap. And it means that they have a horse in the race. They have skin in the game. So if you're wanting to leave your job and you go to your partner and you say, hey, what do you think about me leaving my job? Their initial reaction may be, but what about the salary that you're bringing in? Oh my gosh, what about that? And while they really want to support you and be totally unbiased, that's not necessarily the position that they're in. And so we get to just recognize that they have this bias. Or if you go to your friends and they're not in that position, they're not necessarily suited to answer these. It doesn't mean they can't support you. We get to be aware that there's a bias there, that they have a horse in the race. And so that's something where just be aware of it. And you can ask yourself these questions too. So you can allow yourself, because you may have a bias about where you're going. You've created a story about your job or why it's important to you or what would happen if you leave your job. And it may or may not be true. But finding that person in your life that could be unbiased for you, that's key. That's a role that a coach, a therapist, a counselor, a friend that totally can be unbiased, they can be that for you. And so I encourage you to find that person. All right. So step one, asking and listening questions. And then step two, when people are calling me up and say, I have big decisions, we've listened and we've asked questions. We've gotten into the depth and we're starting to see what the real challenge is. And then we go into their purpose and their vision. And for you, it's defining your purpose and your vision. This is something that's gotten a lot more attention over the last few years about really understanding why we're here. And for me, when I was deciding that with my business and do I stay in there or not, I really got to look at what it is that I wanted to create, the impact that I wanted to make in the world, what that looked like. So when we get to this section, I have a lot of different exercises that we can use. And I actually pulled one up to use with you guys today. And it is a genie lamp. So if you've seen Aladdin, you've recognized this lamp. And what I'm going to ask of you, you can actually close your eyes. You don't need the comment section for this right now. So just close your eyes and play along. So I'm Genie and you're Aladdin. And you found this magic lamp and you used 2 of the 3 wishes that you're granted. You wasted them away. You don't have them anymore, but you have this 3rd wish. And so I can grant you anything that you could possibly want, except for love. That was a rule in the movie Aladdin. I can't grant you love. But what I can do is grant you any other wish that you want. So I want you to think about right now, what would your wish be? What would your wish be? So just think about that. Got your wish? Know what it is? So now imagine that wish has come true. Poof, you've got that wish. You can have that wish. Think about that experience. Think about what it's like. And I want you to think about the feeling that you're experiencing right now when you think about that wish. And I want you to open your eyes and I want you to type in the comments the feeling that you experience when you think about getting that wish. When that wish is granted, what's the feeling that it evokes in you? It might be joy, it might be happiness, it might be peace, tranquility, it might be safety, it might be comfort. It could be any of those. So think about what that is. Relief, yeah, content, happy. Absolutely. So the reality is that there are actually about 8 different things that people really, really want. It has nothing to do with the thing. It has nothing to do with what it is that we actually want. So look at these 8 things on here: peace, freedom, joy, happiness, tranquility, pride, safety, comfort, and see if what you were feeling fit into one of these 8. Yeah, freedom, peace, achievement. Yeah. So when we really understand what it is that we really want, it's not about a thing. It's what that thing represents for us. And so when we're getting these conversations about a job, for example, it's saying whatever it is that this job represents for me, is it doing that for me? Well, when we can get to this level of conversation, then it gets easier to answer the question. And so step 2 in defining your purpose and vision is really understanding what it is that you really, really want. Vision is, I'm here and I want to be here. How do I get there? Purpose is, when I'm there, how am I gifting it to the world? So if it's joy that you really want, your vision is to create that joy and be that joy for the world. Now we got to figure out, how do you show up every day and what's that compensation look like to adjust for that? But when we know that it's joy that you really want, then we can start to apply that into the conversations. So that brings us up into step 3, and we're actually framing the problem. And when we frame the problem, it means that the problem sounds different than when we came in. In the beginning, we were saying that, hey, do I want to quit my job or should I stay here? I don't really know. And so that you're the guy standing on one side, or the girl, the person standing on one side of the mountain, and we want to get to the other. But what's really missing, what's in the gap, is the joy, which brings us to the question now that we get to ask when we actually frame the problem: is it possible for my current job to bring me joy? That's a much different question then should I quit my job? And if the answer here is it possible for my current job to bring me joy, is no, then guess what? That's no. Okay, then we get to find a new job and we get to walk through that process. But if it's yes, then the next question becomes, what gets to change so that it can bring me joy? What gets to change? So in step 3, we are framing the problem. The problem sounds different than the problem that we originally came with. When we speak, and this is in human being in terms with our communication, we talk at this level, but our actual challenges sit underneath it. And so when we start to listen to the listening and the words underneath that, we actually can hear what the real challenges are. When we look at step 1, listening and asking questions, what I'm really doing is saying, what is really important to you? We're starting to dig down to framing the problem. We're starting to step into what's missing in that gap for you. And when we understand that, we can see exactly where we get to go in framing the problem. So then once we frame the problem, then we move into step 4, which is creating the path and checkpoints. And this is my favorite place, because it's one thing to be able to answer the challenge in front of you. It's another thing to be able to actually move forward. And so step 4 is really about understanding what's going to be in the middle. So for example, if this is about getting another job and we say, no, my current job does not bring me joy, I get to find a new one, then the first step point is about figuring out what kinds of jobs you would enjoy. Now, this sounds so simple, but I'll tell you, I talk with a lot of groups, of teams, of individuals. And what happens here in this step is that I'll ask them, what do you get to create today to accomplish your vision? What can you do today that's going to move you forward? And oftentimes when I'm talking, what I'll do is I'll say, I'm going to give you 10 minutes or 5 minutes. The time is irrelevant. I'm going to give you time to figure out what you're going to do today. And you know what happens? This blows my mind every single time. It just happened last week when I was talking to a group. I emphasized today. I even said to them, I was talking with a group the week before. And I said, what do we get to do today to move us forward? And I said, when you set your goal, when you figure out what the first checkpoint's going to be, it's going to happen today. When they came back, it was about what they could accomplish 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, 2 years, 10 years down the road. And I thought, did I not give these instructions clearly enough? So I went back and I said, okay, listen to my words. Today, what can you accomplish today? So I gave them more time and they came back and still was like 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, 8 months down the road. I said, okay, pause. What can we do today that's going to make an impact on what we want to create? How can we move forward today? And then they got it. So if what I want for job today, if I want to create that new job, then today I get to look first at what it is that I enjoy. There's a really simple tool that I use for this that maybe could be helpful for you, and it's called a joy meter. It's very simple. You just take a piece of paper, and for the next 48 hours, you track your activities. And then it's just a thumbs up or a thumbs down. So playing with my kids, thumbs up, thumbs down. Picking my kids up from school, thumbs up, thumbs down. Driving into work, thumbs up, thumbs down. Emailing with clients, thumbs up, thumbs down. Giving a presentation, thumbs up, thumbs down. And so we are really looking at this pattern of what is the stuff that we really like? Because what happens as we get older, we get into this rhythm of just doing things and we miss what it is that we really like. We get disconnected from that. And so when we put these checkpoints in place, when we can say, all right, I get that there's this big goal down the road, but let's focus on what we can do today to move forward. The emphasis is on today. It's not about tomorrow or the future. Anxiety is fear of the future. We're living in the present. And oftentimes we can get so focused on what could have happened in the future or what could happen and what happened in the past that we forget to live in the moment. What can we impact today that's going to move us forward? The reality is none of us know if there's going to be a tomorrow for us. We just don't know that. And so we can only focus on what we're creating today. And so step 4 is really important in understanding how we create that path to move forward. So if the question on your mind right now is, do I stay in my job or not? And joy was what was missing for you. And you said, I don't think I can find it in my current job. I get to look elsewhere. This very first step would be, what is it that actually brings me joy? Now that next step may be about, and then what kinds of jobs would reflect that? And then do I know people that are currently in those jobs that I could reach out to? And then we would build that path, but you're starting in the step that you're in and you get to stay in the step you're in. And so we're not focused on steps 3, 4, and 5 when we're in steps 1. When we're at step 2, we're not focused on what we did in step 1 or what we're going to do in 4, 5, and 6. We're in step 2. And so think about that. How we train our minds to focus is really important in these steps, because that's where I see a lot of people, they have these great visions that they've now established. They know what they want to create, but we get hung up. Remember those things that stop us? We get hung up. And what I found is that when we lock in and we stay in the step that we're in, and we understand that right now, this is what I get to accomplish today to move me forward. And I trust that the next step will be something that will also support me, and the next step. And when I continue to follow these steps, I will get there. That's when we reach our goals. And that's when it happens. And I've got thousands upon thousands of case studies that prove that this is an effective way to reach some pretty big goals. And then step 5, this is the one that I see missed almost all the time. It's the one that I typically blow past and I have to remind myself. So if you're one of those people that oftentimes forget to celebrate, I want to see in the chat a big, we're going to have a big party. We're going to celebrate right now in the chat. Let me know if you're somebody that often forgets the celebration, that you're so focused on the goal that when we actually get there, we just move on to the next goal, that we don't actually stay and celebrate where we're at. Because what happens when we do that is we exhaust ourselves and we forget why we even started. We get to the step 5 and then we think, oh my gosh, I got to go back to step 1. I got some other big challenge that I got to focus. Yeah, I always forget the celebration. Thank you for your honesty, Laura. Trying to change that, but it is hard. Absolutely. But celebration is the key. And the part is that most of the time we have moving targets, which means the goal, we just continually move the goal. Well, when we move the goal, how do you ever celebrate? Because you never actually reach it. So being really concrete that this is the goal. When I set goals with my clients, one of the things that I ask them is to be very specific with a by when. So if you were to say, let's just talk about weight. I know that was one thing that I saw a few times in the goals. It was lose 20 pounds. Awesome. If that was your goal, I would say, okay, great. By when? And so then we might say, okay, by January 1st. Great. Okay, what time January 1st? Oh, I don't know, by the time I go to bed on January 1st. Okay, so by 6 p.m.? By 6 p.m. Central Time? By 6 p.m. Central Time, January 1st, 2022? Okay, awesome. That is very different. I'm going to lose 20 pounds by 6 p.m. January 1st, 2022 versus I'm just going to lose 20 pounds in the next few months. Because now I have a goal to celebrate. January 1st comes, we are celebrating because we've reached, or if you reach that goal sooner, you can celebrate then, but you have a very concrete time frame. Very concrete. Yeah, Elizabeth, thank you. I'm afraid of getting sidetracked if I celebrate. Absolutely. Celebrations don't have to be these huge things. Celebration, you could have it look any way you want. We just talked with my 8-year-old yesterday. So he sometimes has fits. I know it's hard to believe for any of you that have 8-year-olds or children in your life. He has some fits. And one of the things that my husband and I talked about last night with him, which is no different than exactly what we're talking about here, is we said, okay, let's look at the next month. So between now and then November 4th of 2021, if by 6 p.m. on November 4th of 2021, you have been able to go 5 days a week for 4 weeks without any fits, what kind of reward would you like? And he had all kinds of ideas. He wants one of those yes days. If you've seen the Yes Day movie on Netflix, don't have your kids watch it unless you want to do a yes day. But the whole premise of that movie is that the kids get to do whatever they want. They get to be whatever they say within reason, but they get to be a yes. And that was something that was really important to my son. He wants a yes day. Now, if he can go 5 days a week for 4 weeks with no fits, as long as it's legal, I'll do a yes day. I'm that excited. But we're going to know on November 4th. We're actually going to know before November 4th how he's tracking towards that goal. We're going to get to celebrate it. But I know one of the things and the habits that I've gotten to work myself out of is being that concrete and saying we get to celebrate because this gets to happen. And the other thing is, and you alluded to this, of what happens if I get to that date and I haven't reached it? Am I a failure? You can always renegotiate. But what I see happening is that sometimes we renegotiate to these amoeba-like dates. Oh, yeah, I'll get that done maybe in another month. No, we get to see what's missing. The questions that I ask myself, if I don't hit something, I don't go into most of the time, right? I'm a human. I don't go into fear of, I don't go into the failure and I did it wrong. Where I get to go is something worked. There's always something that worked because we're still alive. Something didn't work. There might be a few more of those that didn't work. And something's in the gap. And when I say what worked, what didn't work, and what's in the gap, what worked, what doesn't work, and what's in the gap, once I understand that, then I can renegotiate. Because until I clearly understand what's in the gap, then how do I move forward? Like in the case of losing 20 pounds, if January 1st comes around and I have not lost 20 pounds, something worked. Maybe I lost 15 instead. Something didn't work because I didn't hit 20 pounds. What's in the gap? 5 pounds. But what's really underneath that? Remember when I said we speak here, but it's always something beneath it? There's something else that stopped me from releasing those 5 pounds. And perhaps it's my nutrition. And if that's the case, I might renegotiate my goal to say, I'm going to eat clean, no cheat meals for the next month. That's my goal. because my goal is to my bigger goal is to release the 5 pounds. And that's what's going to get me there. And so when we train our minds to think like this, that's a million decisions that we just outlined right there. But we're being very specific about what we want to create. And so now we understand what's really in our way. And when we know that, then we can create exactly what we want. So when you don't know what to do, you can follow these 5 steps. You can first listen and ask questions. You can have a one-on-one conversation with yourself if that's something that you're able to do. For me, it was about writing. It was about writing all these down and having those prompt questions and thinking about, if I was coaching myself here, what would I ask myself? If your friend came to you and said, should I quit my job? Or whatever the dilemma is in front of you, what questions would you ask? And that's where you start, and just write them out or talk them into your phone, but get them out. Step 2, define your purpose and vision. Understand what it is that you really want, because then you can move into step 3, framing the problem and saying, based on your dilemma, what's really missing? What's really in the gap? And now like in the case of should I quit my job, it's really about, does this job bring me joy? And if the answer is no, then yes, I get to quit my job. But if the answer is yes, it could bring me joy, then I really get to ask myself, what gets to change to bring me joy? So you can apply these same challenges. You can understand what's really in the gap. And then you get to step 4, which is creating the path and checkpoints. This is how we go to, this is all a really nice idea, to this actually makes a difference. So step 4, creating that path, it's understanding what we can do today, with an emphasis on today, in order to reach our goal. Not thinking about, what do I do tomorrow or the next day or the next day or the next month or 6 years from now? What do I do today? Emphasis, big capital letters on today, to move me forward to that goal. And step 5, arguably the most important, is to celebrate. Celebrate. Yes, thank you. Celebrate and enjoy this path that we're on, and enjoy that we are alive, because you guys, there are lots of people that didn't make it to the point that we are today, but we're here and we get to celebrate and be excited that we are reaching our goals, that we're even having this conversation. We get to celebrate what we create, because that's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. So guys, guess what? Ladies and gentlemen, you are number 1 decision makers. You guys are making 35,000 plus decisions a day already. And the tools that we just went through are really meant to enhance and support that. It's meant that you can make decisions with confidence and ease, even if they're really big decisions. And I'm always here. I got all kinds of information. I do, in fact, run that live radio show. I put together this link with a lot of the stuff that we talked about today, what to do when you don't know what to do. It just goes further into those steps. The train your brain, when we talked about focusing, I have a whole 55-minute episode on that. You can watch it via video. There's a TV episode, or watch it live. Decision-making skills, calm and chaos, imposter syndrome. Oh my gosh, you guys, imposter syndrome. That's when we just aren't really sure if we even have the credentials to be in the role that we are. It's crazy how much that can take us out of the game. So we talk all about that. And then I know some of you guys mentioned overwhelm. So there's a whole episode on overwhelm, how to kick it to the curb. So go listen to those. There's tons more content. And if you guys have any questions, just reach out to me. I am happy to support in any way that I can. I'm so excited to be here. I thank you so much. I am a proud Cyclone, and I am happy to answer any questions that you guys have about the material that we covered today. So if you want to put it in the chat, I will answer any questions. Yeah, calm and chaos. Oh my gosh, yes. That's actually a show I recorded right after my mom died. And I just talked about what that was like during that time period. It was just a really crazy time. We actually brought her home into hospice, and we made a bajillion decisions, and they were really, really tough. But calm and chaos, make sure you look at that one. Tamara, wash hands. Yes. Absolutely. These are pretty fun hands right here. These I got in college. I was actually talking about this before the recording, before this session today. I got these for the football game. I have a bunch of them, and they're so fun. God, if you have any other questions, just go ahead and type it in the comment, and we will answer those. If you have anything specific that you want to talk about too, I know there were a lot of challenges that were posted in the form that we sent out. So if you have anything specific that we want to address.
Perfect. And I might just jump in. If you all haven't noticed, there's about a 7-second delay from when questions get typed in to when they show up in the chat. We first want to thank Kathleen for all of the information, for your time and preparing this presentation for us. We know you're very busy. And it looks like a question just popped in from Vegas 242.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how would you recommend thinking through and acting on these things when the problem is you feel overworked and underpaid? Absolutely. So really that's a pause, take a deep breath and ask yourself, what I'm hearing is that you see your value in a different position than your employer sees your value. And so then the question is there a way for you to demonstrate your value? Do you think that your employer ever could see your value differently? And if the answer is no, then that's probably not the role for you. But if it is, yeah, I could give it a chance. There are a few different things that I could shift to demonstrate or have the conversation with my employer that my value is actually different than how it's being uh, utilized or perceived now, then that's a different conversation. So if you think that there's a possibility that your employer could be open to your value looking differently to them and your compensation shifting to reflect that, then that's a place you get to be. And you get to have those conversations. Let's see. I only have one win. If, say, Alexander, Cyclones will only have one win out of 2 games, which one do you want to see against, OU or Texas? Oh, that's tough. I'd probably say OU. But you know what? I'm such a Cyclone fan and enjoy the games that let's just have a win. Let's be excited. Mark, how is this conversation related to having so much to do that you don't do anything? Absolutely. That's very similar to analysis paralysis. It's that feeling of overwhelm. And overwhelm is truly, I just don't know where to go. I don't know which step, I don't know which foot to move forward. And in that case, going back to that unbiased advisor. So whether that's a friend, counselor, therapist, coach, that's the role that I play for a lot of people, it's that you get to have somebody else support you in that. Half the time when I'm talking to people, I'm saying pause, breathe, and just cutting through a lot of the stuff that comes up. We all live in story. I mean, unless you're somebody who's really emotionally intelligent, I'm talking like top 1% of emotional intelligent human beings, we get stuck in story. And that means that we create these stories. Oh, he said this because of this, or he did this, or she did this because of this. That's all story. We don't know inside of somebody else's mind. And so really cutting through that clutter and knowing that whatever somebody else thinks or says of us is not our business. It's not our problem. And so we can only deal with what's right in front of us. And what I'm hearing you say, Mark, is what if there's just too much in front of us? What might be happening is we might be getting caught up in steps 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And we get to really understand what is step 1 in this moment. What is it in this moment? And being clear to everybody else that might be attempting to make step 1 this huge thing, saying this is what step 1 is going to be. I'm happy to get to you. You can be 1.9 or 1.8, but right now I'm focused on step 1 and being clear on our boundaries and expectations. I see, is joy the answer to step 2 or step 3? It could be. It's different for everybody. For me, it's joy was something that I was seeking. And so that was for me, but it's different for everybody. There's 8 main things that we really want. And so a lot of times I've heard some different words being applied, but they really can boil down to those 8 things. And so for you, it might be joy. For somebody else, it might be peace. For somebody else, it might be tranquility. Oftentimes we get some of those words mixed up, but they have very distinct, like joy versus happiness. Joy is this everlasting experience. Happiness is a very momentary thing. And so some people seek happiness and some people seek joy. I seek joy. The Lee Owens, these steps work for changing jobs or careers late in life. Absolutely. Yeah, the steps aren't specific to a problem. It's really about just how we manage our minds around these dilemmas that we have, and really understanding, reframing the problem, and what that how it relates to us. Because the reality, the process is the same, whether I'm working with somebody who is wondering about should they leave, should they quit their business, or you know, should I be in my marriage? It's really the same process that we're walking through. Vegas 242. I was meaning more. What would you recommend someone who is exhausted and doesn't feel safe taking time off to properly think through their options? Oh yeah, absolutely. The word safe is really interesting that you have in there. And if we were talking one-on-one, and feel free to reach out to me and we can have this, because I'm really interested in what you mean under the safe. So is that you feel like your job's at risk if you did that, or physically not safe? So what does that word safe mean for you? And if I just look at that for somebody saying, gosh, I'm just so tired, I feel like if I did take that time off, I'm not even sure I could even focus on it. What I would say is the role of an unbiased advisor for you would be really important, because that's somebody that can help you move through that. And like I said, half the time when I'm talking to people, I spend my time saying, pause, breathe. And I may say, you know what, I take a nap, like really go take a nap, call me back in an hour and let's talk through this, or 2 hours or 3 hours, because sometimes it's just refreshing. But what I know to be true is that oftentimes when we just remove ourselves from a situation for just a minute, and we have a space where we can just let it out, a safe space where, whether it's typing or talking with someone, and we just it's like a verbal vomit when we talk sometimes. We just had to get it out. And when we do that, we feel so much better. It's like an instant relief, not forever, but it's this momentary relief. And then we can make some of these big decisions. Thank you for that. And again, Vegas 242, feel free to follow up with me. Paula Miller, we are taught that delaying gratification is a virtue. We are also taught that not identifying the best answer is shameful. The combination of these two lessons is that deferring a decision is best. Maybe. Yeah, I think that comes up against a belief system too. So that could be for you. For me, that's not the values that I was taught or hold. I mean, obviously delaying gratification for some things, yeah. And I also get to celebrate where I'm at. That's something that I've been practicing. So yes, I was taught that growing up. Not everything that is good in life comes easily or quickly. And so we get to work towards that. So I absolutely see that. And what I'm really hearing you say is that, where do you find the balance in there? And that's where we each get to find that balance. For me, it's about understanding that, yes, I get to celebrate and I get to have long-term goals. But what I get to also do is figure out what a short-term game looks like. Because if I only play the long-term game, then I'm never celebrating. I'm not having any sort of short-term celebrations. A long game without any celebration can easily get boring or get frustrating, and then we just never finish. All right, Alexander, freedom, that's what knocks on my door right away. Yep, I hear you. And I would ask you, what does freedom mean? Financial freedom, time freedom. So there's lots of definitions of that, but really understanding, what does freedom mean to you? Like, that's the biggest thing for everybody here. Freedom means, all these words mean different things to me as it may mean to you. And so it's really about understanding what it means to you. So what does freedom mean to you? And when you know that, then we can work from there. Okay. So if you said, well, gosh, it's not about time freedom at all, it's about financial freedom. Okay, cool. Different discussion. What you may deem as financial freedom, you may say $1 million is financial freedom, where somebody else might say 50,000 is financial freedom, or 5,000 or 500. So we all have different metrics that we've set. And until you know what it is for you, and nobody can make you wrong on that. Comparison is the thief of joy. So nobody can make you wrong on what you believe, but we get to understand, what is it that you believe? What is it that freedom means to you? Right. Dog 2041. What are some good questions to ask yourself to help uncover things keeping you from reaching and defining goals? Yeah. So some good questions to ask yourself would be, really checking in with yourself. So what is it? How would I define the problem right now? A lot of times when people come to me, they can't even define the problem. It's just a feeling of discomfort. So what actually is my problem? What is my relationship with the people around me? When I look at my job, what is it that's actually bothering me? What is it that I don't like? What is it that I do like? We're really quick as human beings to go to what's not working, but then we get to look at what is working as well. So ask ourselves both of those questions. And as you're asking them, it's like peeling back an onion. You're just going to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And so you might even look back. Sometimes when I work with clients and I'll say, okay, don't even think about the problem that's right in front of you. I want to actually talk to you about, tell me about your family growing up. Tell me what that was like. And what I'm doing is just when your mind gets off of the subject at hand, you actually are you're going to come back to it, but you're going to come back to it from a deeper level. So you might say, like, tell me, you might ask yourself, what were my favorite childhood memories? What are some of the memories when I think about growing up that stand out the most? What was my favorite high school experience? What do I remember about college the most? And so what you're really looking at is, what is it that really lights me up? When I think of joy, this is what I think of. When I think of freedom, this is what freedom means to me. And so these are some of the questions that you can start to ask yourself to understand, what does all this stuff really mean to me? All right, look.
All right, I might jump in here real quick. I think there are a couple of other questions. Kathleen, you can maybe read ahead and start to think through those answers. I know we're just at an hour, and I promised we would be giving away a prize. So I want to be respectful of time. Matt Van Winkle, who is on staff at the Alumni Association, is doing the production for us today. He's going to take all of the names of the people who've commented and throw them into a virtual drawing. So you'll probably be seeing some names popping up on screen pretty soon, and we'll have a winner, and we'll be in touch with how you get your prize. So Matt, you want to get it started? Wonderful. Congratulations, D.L. Nielsen. I will be in contact with you here this afternoon on how we can get you your prize. Thanks again to everyone for commenting, participating. Kathleen, thank you again for your time. Do you have a couple more minutes? Are there a couple other questions?
I do. Yeah, I was just looking through these. So Ahmed, what to do when you don't have joy in your current job, even though it provides you financial stability that you don't want to risk? Yeah, and I saw there was a comment from Elizabeth Fox. Can you talk with your employer to see if there are changes you can make in the organization that will make your job a joy for you? Yeah, a great comment. So Ahmed, what I would dig into with you is what's really in the way. And so sometimes it is something at the job that could change, that could bring you joy. What I see a lot of times, and we were actually talking about this earlier, but before we went live, is that a lot of times we as adults, we forget to have fun. We forget what really lights us up. I see this time and time again. And if you actually look at the people that we deem as like the most successful in the world, they have hobbies, really intricate, not even intricate, but they have hobbies, and they spend a ton of time on their hobbies, to the point where they spend as much time in their hobbies as they do their work life. And what they figured out is that when I reset my mind and I have fun and I just go play, and it's something that that it doesn't matter if we're really great at it or not. Warren Buffett plays the ukulele. It just, because he says, I'm in a band and I'm not the best person, and when I'm there, I don't have to make a million decisions. I just get to go and have fun. And so they've realized that that is a way to just release stress. And when we find those outlets, sometimes the things that were bothering us in our work environment just really aren't that big of a deal anymore. So that's something to look at too. What are you doing in your time outside of work? And I get it, believe me, I get it. I have 3 kids, 2 dogs. We had 7 businesses at one point. And so sometimes finding that extra time can be difficult, and there's always ways around that. And so that would be the conversation that I would encourage you to have, is to say, what after hours are you creating that brings joy to your life? And if you're just in this kind of monotonous cycle of, it's like the same thing every single day, I come home and I'm exhausted. There's actually, when you're in perfect, excuse me, when your job and your work are in perfect, let me grab a sip here real quick. When your job and your work are in alignment, you actually have the same amount of energy when you wake up in the morning as you go to bed. So for me, that's a big check for me. My biggest challenge is how I shut down at night, not how I rev up in the morning. And that's because I'm doing things like this, where I absolutely love being in front of people and having these conversations and serving in this way, that when your work aligns with that, shutting down will be your biggest challenge. For you, though, it might be something that happens on outside of work, before or after work. And that's okay too. If you can get it within your work, even better. That may not be the spot that you're in this moment. So just something to think about. Let's see. Mark, do you have any reference material with more details on steps 1 through 5 so we can use to walk through these? Absolutely. That's that link that I posted earlier. If somehow we can get that out. I have a live radio show that it's on, it's in podcasts, the Kathleen Riessen show, Pushing the Boundaries of Leadership. It's also it's through Inspired Choices Network. It runs on iHeartRadio and all these different places. But podcast is probably the easiest way to find it. Or you can click on that link directly that I had up earlier. And one of the episodes that I recorded was what to do when you don't know what to do. It actually walks through these 5 steps and it gives you more information on it. So definitely watch that episode because there's more information there. I'm actually working on a book right now that is just this. It's 100% this. And that's the one when I talked about the categories that I'm going to use. Thank you for that link. It's on screen now. I'll pick more carefully next time on my Amazon categories. But the reality there is just dig in. There's more information coming, but listen to that episode. And if you have questions, just reach out. I'm happy to have a conversation. I think that's all of the questions that we had. You guys, this has been so fun. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, thank you again, Kathleen and everyone. I had sent out in the email yesterday the same link that you used to watch today's webinar is the same link you can use once we wrap up here to watch the recording of it. So you can always go back and rewatch what Kathleen has shared and also all the resources she shared as well. So I hope you all have a great rest of your Tuesday and feel a lot better about some of these decisions that we all have weighing on our minds. So I see you have your gloves back up, Kathleen. Yeah. Perfect. All right. Thank you again. And have a great day.
Bye.